Gloria Donahue again. Welcome back to Nana's Kitchen. It's good to see you again. I hear from so many of you, I honestly feel like there are people in the house with me. And it's a nice feeling. It is a good feeling. Today we're going to make a chocolate cake. I don't use many mixes. I make most things from scratch. But this cake is really good, folks, and it's really quick. It comes from a cookbook, 25 years old. The funny thing is, I picked up a cookbook from the library the other day. I tried to see the new ones to see if I might want to buy one. And I looked through this cookbook, and lo and behold, as one of the favorite recipes in this brand new cookbook is this identical recipe for a chocolate cake. It's a bundt cake. And a bundt cake is shaped like this. They're made by Nordic Ware. They have a couple of different shapes. This is the classic shape. And also the other advantage of this shape is it does hold a full recipe. Some of the other ones, I know I have one, is smaller and does not take as big a quantity as this would. In this recipe, you butter and flour it, or in my case, I put oil and cocoa because I'm not going to frost the entire thing, and I don't want any white flecks of flour. So if I do a chocolate cake, and it's not going to be totally covered by frosting, when it says grease it and flour it, I always use cocoa instead. And make sure you then tap it to get out all the excess. This is another interesting pan because this is half a bundt cake. And even for this cake, occasionally, I've done it in half. And if I do, I measure out the cake mix and the pudding mix that it calls for. And I simply take half of it and put the rest in the freezer and mark, what it is. Because this makes a lovely little cake to take for maybe 6 or 8 people when you're going out. It's nicer maybe than just cutting the big one in half. I actually would like to have 2 of the. I should get another one so that I could make maybe 2 and freeze the other one. But it's a nice pan to have. When we talk about the old cookbooks, a lot of you have said to me, where could I find those old cookbooks? Where they weren't old cookbooks for me. All my cookbooks were bought originally, and some of them I've had many, many, many years. But if you are interested in getting some really nice old cookbooks, your library may be a really good choice. We have a bookseller at ours, and people who are maybe scaling down from their house to a smaller place and just can't keep all those cookbooks anymore, we'll take them to the library or a used bookstore or a garage sale in the neighborhood. And I have a lot of these fundraiser cookbooks because they're people's really favorite recipes. And I'll give you another hint. When you buy a used cookbook, just sort of let it open where it will. And I think you'll find that's one of their favorite recipes because that's what happens in mine. And unfortunately, mine are not all pristine. I could probably lift my finger and get dinner from them. Sorry about that. We're going to make this chocolate cake. I have everything measured. Now that everything is here, this cake can be put together in about 4 minutes. Okay? I'm going to tell you everything that's in it, and then we're going to make it, and we're going to make it quickly. It calls for a box of devil's food mix, of a cake mix, and a box of chocolate instant pudding, 4 eggs, a cup of sour cream, a half a cup of vegetable oil, and I use canola, a half a cup of water, and a cup and a half of semi-sweet chocolate bits. I'm going to put everything but the chocolate bits in just for a moment to get everything all mixed up, and then I'll add the bits. So we're going to put in the cake mix. See, I even cut it already. The instant pudding. 4 eggs, which I cracked separately to make sure they were okay. The cup of sour cream. I always use the regular. I'm afraid I don't do much with light anything. I'd rather almost do without. I'd rather eat an apple than a cheesecake made with really light ingredients, I guess. So there's my sour cream. There's my ½ cup of water. Now I'm going to do a ½ cup of oil. And I'm going to let that all mix for just a bit. The oven is set at 350 and it's going to cook 40 to 45 minutes. And it's not going to take very long for this to mix up. Okay, I think that's combined really well. And these are just regular semi-sweet chocolate bits that you get in the, the flour aisle of your store. And that's it, folks. I mean, that's pretty darn quick for making a cake. Now we're going to pour it into that prepared cake dish. And I just sort of go around. And this will easily serve 12. Easily. Once I get it all in there, then I'll stir it around to make sure that it's evenly divided, because although it will it will go down evenly, but it won't spread around. So you want to make sure here we are, ready to go in the oven, 350 for approximately 40 to 45 minutes. I never know where to look. Thanks. Hi, our cake is out of the oven. I've let it sit about 5 minutes. Then I tested it, press it to see that it comes back. I used a cake tester to bring it out. It'll also start to come in around from the side. And I took just a regular knife to go around the pan to help it loosen, and especially in that center part. And then I'm just going to turn it out onto a rack to cool thoroughly, and then we'll frost it. I know these are terrible looking gloves. I even have new ones that are pristine new, but I'm just used to these old floppy ones. They're great because I can take anything out of the oven with them, and they're so much more flexible than a pot holder. So I really do like them. So I'm going to put the rack over top of the cake, and I'm going to turn it over and hope that it turns over on my rack and comes out. There we go. Successful. Now it will cool and then we'll frost it. We're ready to put the topping on the cake, and it's kind of a cross between a ganache and a frosting. A frosting stays exactly where you put it. Doesn't run, doesn't move, that's frosting. A ganache very often is very thin and runs down the cake, and it's supposed to be a thin coating. This is sort of in between. And you melt 1 stick of butter, which would be 4 ounces, and 6 ounces of semi-sweet chocolate bits. I did it in the microwave. You can do it over low heat on a stove. Let it cool, and then it's interesting because you want it thick enough to run a little bit, but you don't want it to be so thin that it will just disappear. I'm going to put the frosting on the cake on the rack before I move it to a plate, so I can keep the plate a little neater because some of that frosting may run down. So as you can see, this is, I think it's still pourable. So we're going to try this, and you know, if it gets too cool, you could reheat it a little bit, and the opposite, you can put ice cubes in something larger or whatever, a little ice water, and let it sit in ice water. Just keep stirring it because you don't want some of it to be a consistency different than the rest. So we're just going to put this over, and I just do it very free form, and I do want it to be enough that it's going to run down a little bit. Maybe I'd like it a little thinner. I'm not going to change it, but I can see now it's... So it's a frosting, but it's not heavy. Those of you who have seen my other videos know my husband doesn't like frosting, so I don't really make many things that have frosting. And of course, this is not as sweet as a regular frosting would be because it's just the chocolate bits and butter. So we're going to have frosting, we're going to have coating on top, a little thicker, but then it is going to kind of run down the cake. And that's what I wanted. But not knowing for sure how much was going to run down, I thought, well, I think I'd rather do it over the rack where I can remove the extra than on the plate where I was going to serve it. Just sort of go down so it goes down the crevices. This is one that I frequently make Christmas Eve after church. It's a very good chocolate cake. Wonderful with ice cream, of course. So I thank you very much for stopping by Nana's Cookery. It is always my pleasure to have you in the kitchen with me. I feel like you're friends. I love to hear from you. Thanks again. Don't forget to subscribe, my producer says. He's always at me. This grandson is tormenting me. It's a good thing I love him so much. Bye-bye.